Shivani Gupta, welcome to Hunter Business Insider. It's exciting to have you here.
It's exciting to be here, thank you.
That's cool. We think Enviro Pacific, I think I've mentioned that we are, I was going to say hermits, but no, we're nomads. That's what we are. It's not good, but anyway, we are nomads, and we'll thank anyone who has us in their boardroom. Co-founder of Passionate People Institute, extraordinary name. We'll talk about that in a little while. We do want to go on this journey from start to now. Tell me why and what you do and why you started it.
Well, I found, Mark, like so many people in the world, that I was not very passionate about my work. In fact, we know that statistically now over 80% of people are dispassionate about their work, and I was one of those people just going along the corporate journey, climbing from this job to the next job, you know, thinking that once I got to a senior management role, earning lots of money, living on the right side of the street, that I would be much happier, much content. And to my dismay, I found that once I got there, I really wasn't. And that, you know, despite having all of these things, I just felt this real deep dissatisfaction with who I was and what I had. And so at that time, I took off to Nepal and went trekking for a month. And that was a life-changing, transforming trip for me, where I really, for the first time, did some soul-searching, did a lot of thinking, feeling through what I really wanted. And I felt that what I really wanted to do was make a difference in people's lives. And as great a job that I had at the big corporate, and I had a great boss and great staff, that really wasn't fulfilling me anymore. And
we should take that leap back, because you are an engineer, or a degree qualified engineer in electronics, electrical and electronics, aren't you?
I am.
That's what you were working in before Nepal.
Yeah, well, I actually started off my career as an engineer, and I was that typical 17-year-old who has no idea what they want to do. My father's a mechanical engineer, so I've always been very inspired by him. He's always been a great mentor, so I thought I'd follow in Dad's footsteps. So I became an engineer, worked as an engineer for 3 years, and a typical Gen Y at the time, thinking, oh, this is not going to cut it. This is going to take too long to get into senior management, you know, as we started talking about earlier. So I thought I'd go and do an MBA and go into sales and marketing, and that would accelerate my career. That would get me there by the time I was 25. And I didn't get there at 25. I got to a senior executive role at 27, which was still pretty young. And like I said, it wasn't what it was cut out to be. Yeah. So that ambition that I'd had since the age of 15 of doing, you know, X, Y, Z that would get me there really didn't nurture that.
Hallucinations are rife.
Yeah, absolutely.
Indeed.
And I think that when you're, you know, like a lot of us, that, you know, we think when we have a void in our life, that when we get to that we'll actually become so much happier, and often we don't. Often we get to that success and we think that doesn't feel like success at all.
So what did you do when you got back from Nepal?
I was in a long-term relationship, and I was in this great job, and in fact I was working for BHP Billiton at the time, and they'd offered me some opportunities to go overseas, and I'd run a couple of offices there, and I came back and resigned from the corporate job. And in the same week, I left my long-term relationship. And I remember thinking, I hope I'm not having an early midlife crisis. And I remember a couple of friends saying, are you sure? Yeah. And the answer is no. You know, I don't think you ever know. I think you can have all the theory of running your own business or doing whatever it is that you want to do that you're really passionate about, but it's not until you delve into that you go, wow, this is hard.
And we need that moment, Nepal, for you, and to really step out of that very comfortable position, don't we? Yeah,
we do. And you know, there's so many stories, Mark, I could tell you about Nepal, but you know, one that stands out is that I remember this little boy who was about 5 years old, just gorgeous, just beautiful. And when I shut my eyes, I can often see him. And he ran up to me, and I was carrying these really simple 1-cent lollies with me, and I gave him a lolly. And a couple of minutes later, his little sister, who was about 3 and a half, ran up. And I thought, you know, I'm sure that she'll ask me for a lolly. And she didn't. And he didn't ask me for another one. He bit his lolly in half and he gave it to her. Yeah. And I remember thinking, and they just both stood there smiling at me. And I kept thinking, why are these people so happy? What are they doing? Why are they so content with something that's so little, yet I have so much and I feel so discontent, so dissatisfied? And so I think that it's that sort of moments where you take time out and you reflect on what you have, and unless you're really loving what you're doing, it's so important just to shift that. And so for me, it was a huge shift to say, go and do it now. You know, I don't want to get to
how long ago was this?
It'll be 10 years this year.
Wow.
It'll be 10 years I would have been in business this year.
Happy reframed life.
Well, yeah. And you know, I often say to people when I'm speaking to them that I work out that we've roughly got around 4,000 weeks in our life. You know, roughly around 50 weeks, just to round it off, and roughly around 80 years. So when you round that off, it's around 4,000 weeks, and which is not a lot. You know, it's not a lot.
It's a terrifying moment.
It
Thanks
is.
for sharing that with me.
It's depressing, isn't it? You go, oh God, now I feel depressed. I've only got 1,600 or 1,800 or whatever left.
Yeah.
And but I think it's important when you do it mathematically like that, because you realise, because so many people get to the beginning of the week.
So did you know what you were going to do after Nepal, and you came home, you resigned from that little Australian mining company and left a long-term relationship? Did you know at that point what you were going to do?
I didn't know the what. I was very clear on the why.
Right.
So the why was, why had I left was that I wanted to inspire millions of people. What I was going to do that was very hazy. And so I guess I just fell into stuff. You know, people said, oh, could you do that? In fact, my old boss was my first client. And he said, well, now that you've decided to leave, can you come and finish this project for me? Absolutely. So he was my first client, which was lovely. He was a great mentor and boss. And so I just kind of did bits of consulting, did bits of coaching, did bits of things, and found my way through, because it was cash flow. And so, you take the bits that come in because it's cash flow. And it was only really about a year and a half, 2 years into it that I started to get clear about what I wanted to do, but equally also what I didn't want to do. What are the stuff that that I wasn't good at, that I wasn't really into, not really passionate about, what I just didn't want to do. So it's become clearer and clearer each year.
So what were some of those things you wanted to avoid?
I got really clear that, when somebody asked me to be a time management expert, for example, I remember somebody saying to me in my first year of business, Shivani, you're great at presentations. Will you come and do a presentation on time management? I was like, absolutely, why not? So I remember, going off to the library, designing a little PowerPoint, been there, done that sort of stuff, and designed a presentation. So that's an example of something where I thought, I'm a pretty good time manager. I've helped other people with it, but it's not something that I'm really into.
Yeah.
I don't think I want to give presentations and speak about and coach people on time management as the area of expertise. And so I started to say no to more things, and that continues. I think when you get clearer and clearer, you're never there, I don't think, in a business. So each year I go, when I want to do more of that and dive into the depth of that rather than be into the breadth of something.
Journalism. You are doing journalism?
No.
No?
Oh, as in media?
Yeah, as in
media.
media.
I speak about passion now in the
Yeah.
media, and I write for Fairfax, and I do a heap of things. I do things like this, with you, around trying to get that message out around passion. But it really is now honed into that expertise of passion and really getting people to become passionate about their work and about their lives.
Okay. Is there a strategy or two that you've followed in the last 2 years as you define and refine what Passionate People Institute does, or is it still open?
Look, I think that people got very confused about this word passion, and a lot of people associate it with their personal relationships or, sexual relationships. And so what we wanted to be able to do is to say, well, how do we define that? So really we got clear, and the strategy that really helped us working with a couple of mentors was really around getting passion about your work. So we got really clear about our clients, and what we did in terms of a strategy was to say, well, who is really our target market? Are we really a B2B? Are we a B2B business, or are we a B2C business? And that really helped us, because I think in the past we were trying to serve both, and we realised that in terms of getting that funnel and getting some of that systems and business models in place, we needed to focus on one.
And are you?
And we focused on B2B.
Yeah.
So we said that,
It's a great line, I've got to interrupt, because I love your line, the honesty about we will deliver passion to your team, so they either stay or leave more passionately.
Yes.
Cool line, I love that.
Yeah, and often we talk about that 4,000 week statistic,
Yeah.
and we say, look, if you really don't like working for this business, your leaders aren't paying us to say this, but really go and do something you love.
Absolutely.
You don't want to get to your deathbed and go, gee, I wish I hadn't worked for company ABC. It literally is, and really it's about maximising some of that around your work.
Yeah, that's cool. The next 12 months, what does that look like? Do you sit down and do a business plan with Scott? And
We do at the beginning of every year. We also have things that we learned from, I always call them masters, people that are doing great things around the world. because one of the things I learned is somebody's already doing what you're trying to do. So let's learn from them rather than having to reinvent
So
our
how do
thing.
and you go and meet them?
Yeah, we do lots of work. We spend a good 4 to 6 weeks every year going and learning from different global masters around the world. We spend a good percent of our budget doing that every year because we want to keep learning and growing. And so not only do we do a business plan, but one of the great things we learned was doing a 120-day plan.
Right.
So what we do is we do the broader strategy, usually 1 to 2 years out, and then we say, what do we want to actually really, really clearly, definitively achieve in 120 days? And we've learned that working backwards works really well. And now we work with some of our clients to do that. So rather than say, where do you want to be? That's a great vision exercise. But then you work back to 120 days, right, which is 4 months, and then we say what do we want to do each month, and then what we want to do each week. So we've got a few dot points each week that we want to get through that will help us achieve that broader strategic plan.
Yeah, fantastic. What surprised you in this? Can you be surprised, or are you just open to what happens around you, Shivani?
Constantly. One of the things that really amazes me is every client, every company we work with is mirroring something about us. So, they're often, sometimes we're giving guidance on something, we're going, we should really apply that more to ourselves.
Yes.
Because people are constant mirrors to what we do. The other thing that really surprises me, Mark, is how many people have these aha moments, around the fact that they're going, no, I'm actually not really passionate about what my work is. I'm really not passionate about my relationships.
It's such a critical part. I was going to say originally, it's such an easy part to talk about because no one talks about it. And as soon as you do, you light up. It's not dissimilar to what we do in my other life. But you do. They are aha moments, and they hang out for people like you to metaphorically slap them and say, "Excuse me, are you really passionate? Can I get you more passionate about this?"
Yeah,
so.
and we call it silent slapping. So they feel the slap, but it's very subtle, and really is. I mean, that really astounds me and surprises me, and it really keeps me very enthused about what I do, because when people get it, and often they end up in tears, when they get it, they go, "Oh my goodness, this is not really working," or "Wow, I am loving what I'm doing, and how do I do more of that?" So it's not always about the negative side of it and leaving, but people get so then linked into what they do. That just constantly amazes me, surprises me, and excites me, because I just think it's so great that people do that.
And how's we'll go back to the business plan. You have clients and you do speaking. What do you want to do more of? Do you want more clients, or do you want to do more speaking?
We still have this broader vision of influencing millions of people. So we are constantly
thinking... Actually, a buddy
thinking...
of mine from the University of Western Sydney, who was at a conference or a seminar at the Hunter University, came back and said, "I've just met this girl. You must know her. She wants to influence millions of people." And I thought, "No, I don't know." And that was you. That was probably about 5 years ago. Yeah, and you touch people like that. There's no doubt. So the speaking and the clients
and being really strategic about it. Speaking is lovely for the ego, but really it needs to fit into that broader strategic business model. And we're also now starting to say, well, things that we've got access to technology that we didn't have 5 or 6 years ago. So utilising things like social media and getting our message out. And we are currently doing some tests on Facebook and actually seeing, well, what do people want to talk about when it comes to passion? What do leaders want to talk about when it comes to passion? What are the pain points? What are the issues that they have in business that we can then help them with? And put out articles, put out free videos to create that conversation about it. So we keep going back to that broader model of saying, how do we create a conversation around the globe around getting people to be more passionate about the work that they have and lead more passionate lives? And sometimes it's in the form of speaking, other times it's writing.
What gets in their road, do you think, about what pushes passion out of their lives in the workplace sort of thing? Because
people get used to living a 5 out of 10 life.
Right.
They get used to, leaving, that mediocre. So they have a desire to do that, but they have no idea how to do it. And they get so stuck on the how that they lose sight of the why. And so we constantly say to people, you've got to go and back and tap into the why. You know, when you come across kids, I love when you listen to kids, and we've got a couple of little ones and a couple of teenagers at home, and you know, they want to conquer the world. You know, that they say to you that they're going to, you know, be an astronaut, or they're going to become a fairy and travel around the world. And they have these dreams, and I think all of us as human beings have dreams, but at some point somebody's told us that we can't, or we're not good enough, or we get fearful, or we've tried something and completely failed. And then we bring that into our work, we bring that into our personal lives, and we get to that point that we stop dreaming.
And this is a plug for Seth Godin, who is
I love Seth Godin.
Yeah, he's love just him. Talks about stealing dreams, and we steal dreams at school age.
We do.
And so yeah, it's a cool thing.
Yeah, and we have a 3-year-old, and you know, you can start to see that she's starting to question herself, and she's starting to say, "Mummy, I can't do that." And I said, "Honey, you can do anything. You can absolutely do anything." And it's really about you know, allowing some of those dreams to nurture. So when you're working with people, it's really about getting them not necessarily to go into their childhood, but say, look, you know, if you were leading an ideal life, what would you do for work? If you were leading an ideal life, what would you do, you know, if money was no object? And people come up with amazing things, and they light up. And often that's where their true passion is, whether it's a job or a business, it's quite irrelevant. But then they start to create what more if they want at work. And also leaders, you know, leaders influence hundreds and thousands of people. So we love working with leaders because...
How are our leaders in Australia and in Newcastle right now? Do you look around and say, hey, here's some inspirational people?
You know, one of the things that's great about Newcastle and the Hunter is that people aren't just switching jobs all the time. Now that obviously has its downsides as well, but I think what's a great thing around leadership is people are there to stay. You know, we often talk about that in our politics or in businesses where people say, I'm here for 2 or 3 years and I'm out of here, next job. So what I love about Newcastle and the Hunter is people are here to stay. Most of the leaders here that I've worked with have a long-term view. They're not just trying to get short runs. They've got a long-term investment in their people. They've got a long-term strategy, because they don't just want to jump jobs. And if they're business owners or they're directors of big firms, they want that thing to succeed, more for the people, not just themselves. And so it's really great working with people who've got that long-term view. And I think the downside of it is that sometimes a lot of the people in the Hunter and Newcastle are conservative. So because they are there, they're not willing to make some of those short-term changes that will really drive that. So part of our role is to really challenge their thinking and say, well, have you thought about bringing this forward? Why don't we accelerate that bit and do that, so you start to get a different shift in your people.
And they are our opportunities, aren't they?
Yeah.
We're in similar places.
Yeah.
Work-life balance, you work with your co-founder. You share some children.
We do. We do.
Those wonderful moments. How do you balance? Do you in your 120-day plan? You know, do you say, okay, well, I need this much, and Scott needs this much, and we need this much together? Do you do that? You
know, Mark, I've got to tell you the story. I used to get hired to speak on work-life balance before I had children. I had no idea what I was talking about. Now, look, I always say that you can have it all. You just can't have it all at the same time. Yeah. So one of the things that we talk about is that we've got 7 areas of our life. You know, work being one, our health being one, obviously our family and children being one, you know, our spirituality, the way that we use our mind and learning. And so at any given time, you can really only focus and properly focus on 3 things. So you've got to choose what you're going to work on.
Blokes can multitask already. Can Scott do 3?
Look, everybody can do 3.
Okay,
maybe just not all 3 at the same time.
Yeah.
But like, you know, that out of the 7 areas, you need to prioritise on 3.
Yeah.
So for me, and everybody's passions and values are different. You know, my passion, my number one passion is my work. And that took me a long time as a woman and as a mother to get to feeling comfortable with that and saying that without guilt. It's not to say that I'm that driven that I wouldn't go and look after my sick children or, you know, be at home and be present. I don't take work home. I don't work on weekends from my balance perspective, but I'm very dedicated to what I do, and I believe that I'm here to serve that purpose. My family is my, you know, number 2 passion, and my health is my number 3 passion. And so what happens is, invariably from a friend's perspective, sometimes because they're lower level on my passions, as much as I'm a social person, I love people, often I have to choose in favour of my passions. And so every day I say, when somebody wants to do that, I go, does that serve my top 3 passions? And if it doesn't, as heartbreaking as it is, I learned to say no.
Yeah, it's about discipline.
And it is, and it's really about saying no. Whereas I've done it, and I still do it at times. And I find that we often then try to live according to other people's passions. So we want to kind of say yes to things because we find it hard to say no. And it's about really being congruent.
I've only just started blogging, and I think I've done one on how good it is to say no.
Oh, look, and it's a hard thing. And I know that I've got an ethnic background. I come from an Indian culture where it's very hard to say no, and particularly as a woman in society, it's very hard to say no. But when you don't, you just get so exhausted. And I find that that's part of the balance, is we get exhausted because we're not doing stuff we love. We're doing stuff because we can't say no. We're doing stuff what other people love.
Indeed. If we love it, it gives us a clearer
It doesn't actually feel like balance at all.
No,
because
when
if I could 100% live those three things, and I do delve into the other four, right, at times, because that's just life. If I could just do that purely, there wouldn't be an issue about balance. The balance becomes an issue when we're working in an area we don't really love, or we're doing a job we hate, or we're in a relationship we really dislike. So it's really about saying, how do I do those top three? So I always say to people, you can't do all seven. No. It's just not possible. I've never seen anybody do all seven. So pick your three for now, do them for 6 or 12 months, and then if you want to shift it, then bring something else up, take something else down, and then do it that way.
Yeah. We give you the opportunity now, Shivani, to change something in the Hunter business environment. It's a magic wand. Hunter Business Insider does it regularly, and we can change anything you want. You've just got to verbalise what you'd like changed. This is your rant. This is your soapbox.
Only 60 seconds? Okay.
What would you like to change?
I would love for people in the Hunter, as well as people in the world, but people in the Hunter, for this Business Insider, to really go back and look at your life and really look at what you're passionate about. To really look at those 7 areas, and if you want a list of it, we'll talk about where you can get and download that list for free, and really look at what you're passionate about and start living according to what you love and start leading the life that you really want. And if you really want to make some shifts in your business or in your work, then kind of do it. Just don't wait for somebody else to shift it for you, or live a 5 or 6 out of 10 life, or even lower number out of 10 life. So I'd love to see more people living the life that they want to live and doing the work in their business. That just excites me when I come across people who love it, whether they're stay-at-home mums or whether they're running big businesses or they're amazing gym junkies and ultra fit. I just love it because I love hanging out with people who are doing what they love.
Shivani, we're talking, it seems, about such a fundamental thing, about enjoying life, enjoying what you do. How do we get distracted from that? Why don't we ask ourselves that question without going to a passionate People Institute presentation or the website and saying, hey, I need to do something? Why don't we do it naturally?
There are 3 reasons. One is that people don't take enough time to reflect on their life. They just live. So for me, it was the Nepal. You don't have to go to Nepal to find it, but you need to take some time out to reflect on what's really not working for you. Where are you really dissatisfied? Where are you really discontent? The second thing is we don't allow ourselves to visualise an ideal life, because we ask ourselves, who am I to live an ideal life? That's really for this person that's already achieved it. It's not true. It's the everyday people that achieve that when they get really clear and they allow themselves to believe in that. And the third reason, which is linked into the second, is we're not educated about it. We're actually not taught that it's okay to go out and do that. Our school systems, our workplaces, our parents, as a great and the best job that they do, we're not taught to say that we can actually go out and be magnificent, that we can go out and create any life that we want. We're told that what we have is, you've got to be lucky. And as much as I love my parents, they came from pretty poor backgrounds. And I remember them saying things like they had belief systems around, we should be very lucky that we've got that. Absolutely, it's about being grateful for what you have, but it's okay to desire more. You're not greedy, you're not terrible. It's absolutely okay to desire to go and change millions of people's lives or to go and be a multimillionaire. You're not greedy if you want to be a multimillionaire. It's why you want to become a multimillionaire, getting really clear about it and then achieving that. So I think that if we were taught to think differently and if we believed in ourselves and we allowed ourselves to be more, that we're not taught those things, And you know, if part of our journey is if we can help people do that, then wouldn't that be great that people go, maybe it's possible, maybe I can actually do that, and it's not for somebody out there, maybe it's actually also for me.
So it is about permission, giving ourselves permission to
Yeah.
dare to believe.
Absolutely. Dare to dream, dare to live an ideal life. And you know, this is not just motivation, this is not just, you know, words. You know, this is a science. This is a way that you can actually follow steps. You know, for me, I love 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You know, I love steps, being and having an engineering background. There is a way that people have done this, millions of people around the world, and we have access to that now. And so it's not some stuff out there, it's stuff that we can follow that science and achieve that for ourselves.
Shivani Gupta, we love it too. Thank you for coming in.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yes.